and thanks for joining me on Substack Live.
Okay.
Um, I am excited to also talk again. And of course, like before we push live, we just found out we had some common interests in Polish pottery. So I love this so much. I had no idea that anyone else was in this niche area. But not only is a fellow dietitian, but also a fellow non-diet dietitian. So I mean,
Yes.
this is so
And
great.
you know what? It's so funny because I use my Polish pottery as examples of how satisfaction can be like about the plate and about the
Hmm.
experience.
Hmm.
And we all have like a favorite coffee mug, right? Or like tea mug.
Yeah.
And like and we were talking about mugs. That's how we got started because I was
Yeah.
admiring yours. But it makes a difference in the experience of eating, right? Is if you like the plates.
Yes.
So what I love about Polish pottery, and then I promise I'll stop, is that like
Please.
it's not one pattern. It's all these
Yes.
different patterns, right? So like
Mhm.
you can really just have, your favorites for different occasions. And,
Mhm. Well, and the Polish party in particular, it's so hearty, but it also looks special, and so it can be every day, but make every day special. And
oh, yeah,
and I know it does sound kind of goofy, but also, like, in the time, especially like, where I live in the US, like, the world is just so chaotic and not stable, and for many people, not safe, and so having beauty so close to you, for me, it, like, energizes me, and, yeah, some, like, easy escapism, but then also, like, time to recharge, and energize and feel joy. So, if anyone else out there is into the Polish pottery too, um, let us know. We can geek it out together. And why we're here, though, is because this week's episode of Find Your Food Voice is, it features a letter from someone who is unpacking their complicated history with food in midlife. And in particular, this person shared with us that their grandmother was like super into pushing diets on her daughter, which is this letter writer's mom. And that mom was like took a vow basically to never push diets on her daughter. But yet this person still is unpacking this complicated history of food, and which I feel like is really important itself because those of us
yeah,
who are trying to reject diet culture and to influence young people, sometimes it still like gets to them because we live
yeah,
in a pervasive
absolutely.
culture. But this person, as I talked about midlife, I thought of you because I knew that you were publishing a book on menopause and non-diet ways to help. So that's why I invited you on the podcast today. So, or not today, but invited you on the podcast that came out this week. And something we didn't talk about was like what got you into wanting to spend time talking about midlife issues and nutrition and especially like rejecting diet culture.
Oh gosh, and I love this question, but I also find it hard to I don't have an elevator pitch for my
That's
story, but
okay. Yeah.
essentially,
Mhm.
like everyone else, I was introduced to diet culture, when I was 11 or 12, basically, like that onset
Mhm.
of puberty, body changes, didn't know that it was normal, kind of started my first diet at 12, and then became a professional dieter, went into nutrition and then naturopathic medicine so I could like figure it all out and fix myself, like such a common
Right.
story, especially amongst
Totally.
like our profession. And, things were like okay until perimenopause hit me a little bit early at 37. And so at 37, it just kind of all crash landed. Like all the things weren't working anymore. But I also knew in the back of my mind that like diets just don't work anymore. So this is more than a decade ago. So it was kind of this crash landing of I have been dieting and prescribing diets for more than 20 years now. And it really feels like this doesn't work anymore. And then realized it worked. Like it wasn't me that was broken, it wasn't all the other people that were broken. It was, the fact that diets don't work. And then I became really passionate about understanding everything I could about menopause and nutrition because I tried hormone therapy. I wanted it to work, but it didn't. I was one of those people that I'm just hormone sensitive, so it made me feel worse. And so when that didn't work, I really wanted to learn like is where do I find that sweet spot between learning about food and nutrition and learning to apply it through that non-diet intuitive eating lens. And so that's when I started doing the training to become an intuitive eating counselor. And the rest is kind of history. Like I really just decided like this is what feels aligned with me for kind of my career now. And so
Mhm.
it's been, probably 6 or 7 years really that I've been kind of solely focused on trying to create a weight inclusive non-diet space for women in midlife.
Yeah.
Um, be- yeah, diet culture is everywhere, but it's especially there waiting to pounce if you're in midlife.
Yeah. Well, and for those of us who are in midlife and beyond, we're all like, "Yes." But for those who are, listening, who maybe aren't quite there yet, what have you found to be, like, a unique part of the midlife diet culture experience?
Oh, so much of I think the messaging about nutrition and health in midlife is fear based,
Yeah.
which is really the part that makes me angry
Mhm.
because fear is used as a tactic. It's like, well, if you don't do this, this really bad thing is going to happen. And if you had tried harder, you could prevent it.
Mm.
Or like there is this moralization of like, well, I have to do that now, or I really have to lose weight now, instead of focusing on the behaviors, which we know is like a much more sustainable way of improving our health, is to find behaviors that align with our values and our capacity and our interests and our time and resources. And so for me, it's is really calling out the fear-based messaging. Like menopause is not the end. It's just the end of your period.
Yeah.
It is not
Let me move
like that.
I'm gonna say how great, like, not having a period anymore can be.
Like
I'm
it is
still waiting for
not
mine,
the
but
thing.
I'm still waiting for mine to be over. Um,
Oh my god. So I'm 3 years post, like, almost 4 years postmenopausal now, and so I'm, like, well on the other side, and I will say every day to anyone who will listen, I would not go back for anything. I love life after menopause, and that's the other thing I want people to know, like, this is going somewhere good,
yeah.
like, it is not the beginning of the end. The transition is rough, like, let's not
Mhm.
sugarcoat it, like, some people have a really awful time. But we also don't have to just suffer through that. Like, I think that's another message that I like to really break down is that you don't have to suffer through menopause. There are so many different options available to you. And everybody should know about them, right? Like it's not just because it's natural doesn't mean that you have to wing it, right?
Right, right. Goodness. I think you just like said so many things that are so important in this conversation, like how we're supposed to do it naturally and how we're led to believe it's the end. And the thing that I'm reflecting on as someone who's like knee deep, like, come on, menopause, let's go. I'm ready, but I'm not there yet. Is I was led to believe that, like, my period ending would be a sad thing, and that I'll be sad when it's over, and it's this horrible thing, but what I'm finding from people who are just a few ahead of me, and hearing you say this now too, is that, like, it actually can be this, like, wonderful thing, to be done with this part of your life, and why not look forward to it? Why not expect it to your life to continue to bring more joy, have new different experiences instead of like this is the end of the end and um
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. And that makes sense of like the fear, which I think like especially like doctors and healthcare providers, we love to use fear as a tactic to change behaviors, which heads up, like fear is not something that has been shown to really promote behavior change anyway. So like we shouldn't be using it. But yeah, like dying, like a fear of death and then fear of not being around for your family. I mean, of course, that's like a really like accessible fear as you're getting closer to midlife and beyond. So I hate that they can easily read that works, but um something that I wanna mention and that they talked about in the letter was they used a word that I think is always so interesting in this midlife experience is the word frumpy.
Mm,
For how the person
uh,
said the word frumpy and how they didn't think they could be stylish. And, the word frumpy I've talked so much about with my friends and peers and colleagues who are a little bit older than me about, like, how that's, like, a word that so many of us, like, kinda carry, but, like, how we've tried to, like, reframe it or turn on its head or just even reject that, like, neat for, like, the male gaze kind of, like, approach to dressing and things like that. Do you talk about, like, body image or at all in your book? I know it's a cookbook, but do you talk about
Yeah.
your experience in your body too?
I definitely do, and so the way that I have laid out this book is that I really kinda wanted to follow the framework that I use when I'm working with people, which is the first part is let's clear the air about what's happening. So what are the hormone changes, understanding those hormone changes kind of through a weight neutral lens. The second part is laying out the 9 most common symptoms, and for each of those symptoms, I give a kitchen connection. And one of those is body changes. And so acknowledging that they happen to most people, acknowledging that, they're not your fault, acknowledging some of the hormone changes that are involved, and then really kind of focusing on how can you support and honor the body that you have today.
I love
So, oh, I definitely address it because that's the most common symptom, really, right? Um, that's really kind of what people feel like they're failing at, is they can be doing everything else right, and then they're like, "Yeah, but I now have a belly, so what's wrong? What am I wrong?" And it's like, "You're not doing anything wrong. This change is programmed into your DNA. Your body is just changing the way a human body changes." And so, yeah, definitely talk about that.
Yes. I was just, texting with a friend who was mentioning her, like, body changes going through perimenopause, and I was like, "I just wanna let you know in case you haven't heard this, but, like, that's what our bodies are supposed to do in their 40s and 50s. Like, this is just what happens." And I often, especially with my friends, I'm like, who aren't in this space at all, I'm like, "I need to clock in for a little bit and just tell you, like, this is just what our bodies are supposed to do." And she's like, "Ugh, I needed that. Like, I just needed to know that I am doing it wrong," you know?
Yeah.
Uh,
And I
so
think that, just anybody who's listening and who are like, okay, why is it happening? The short answer is that we have this change in our hormone soup, and as we go from a predominantly high estrogen soup to a low estrogen soup or lower estrogen soup, there's a redistribution of kind of where our body deposits fat on our body. And so where, people typically would have, or, the pear shape that we associate with kind of, reproductive health or reproductive years now becomes a little bit more apple shaped. And so that change is not because of anything you're eating or not eating, right? Like that is a change that almost everybody, regardless of shape, size, color, height, whatever, goes through. And then the other thing that's happening is, just this convergence of life factors. And so, when we look at data for men and women, both men and women experience body changes and weight gain. But we hone in on like menopause as like this thing that happens. And, if you fight it and control it, you can fight back when that's probably not the case.
Yes, the fighting and controlling. Like, when
Yeah.
can we put down, like, the battle gear and the shields and just, like, stop fighting and controlling,
Yeah.
ourselves and instead, like, fight the everything burning around us, like, United States. We need to be focusing on fighting and controlling that. Well, I don't wanna keep you too much longer, but I would love for you to, share with us the name of your book, where can people buy it
Yes.
out? I know you have a copy handy. Yes, awesome.
So, Eat to Thrive during menopause, it officially hits the shelves on the 21st, which is Tuesday, which I can't even believe.
Right. That
So there's still time to pre-order, and there's some pre-order bonus recipes that you can access. But so just kind of the long and the short of it is that it really is a book about helping you understand what's happening, understanding the symptoms through an integrative, weight inclusive lens, and really making those kitchen connections through a partnership with your body. Like these are things you can add in. So all of the recipes, I introduce these little tags for what I call these key ingredients. And so instead of talking about food in terms of nutritionism, so you have this much fiber and this much protein, and with them we tend to get focused on numbers. So I wanted to kind of give people these little buckets or these labels of like, these are foods that are rich in soy and phytoestrogens, these are foods that are rich in protein or high in fiber, so that you can still have that gentle nutrition beacon. So if you have some health related interests or goals, and you know that maybe including more of these might be helpful, this book kind of gives you that nudge in that direction without getting you kind of focused on which is best, which has the most, which tends to get us into that like all or nothing mindset.
Yes, yes. Don't get in the trap.
Don't
So,
get
yeah.
that.
So, what I will do for those who are catching live, I always send out a replay that has all the links to things, and I'll put a link to our episode. I'll put a link to your book and your website and everything. So, thank you so much, Jen, for joining live. And I'm so glad that we now have this like shared connection of Polish pottery. It blows my mind that we have this niche at the same time. So maybe we'll chat offline about that. But
Definitely.
fun and have so much fun with the book coming out. It's such a big deal.
Thank you. And thank you for including me in your podcast. I love the work that you do, especially including people's stories. I think that's
Oh,
such an important do. So thank you.
thank you. All right. Well, have a great rest of the day, everybody.